What would it look like if Christopher Nolan worked on Guillermo del Toro's films and Guillermo del Toro worked on Christopher Nolan's film? Hi, I'm Jordan the Nerd of Gold, and earlier today I watched a video about this girl talking about why she liked Guillermo del Toro over Christopher Nolan, and a director she thought was a little overhyped. I really wish I had liked that video because I forgot, so that way I could tag the creator. But I don't think it's necessarily fair to compare those two directors because they are very different despite some overlaps in their work, and I mean that more thematically and like intellectually, like what they like to work on, than I mean like what they actually do, because they're two very different styles there. I love them both and I think they're great directors, but I don't think it's necessarily fair to compare those two. I think the only reason we draw comparisons between them is because they are popular mainstream directors. Other than that, I really don't think that's necessarily a good way to compare them by comparing their works against each other, because they are very different directors. But there is a way we can do this. I don't think it'll ever happen in real life, but it'd be extremely cool as an experiment of like how you would approach things. And I think that would be to have Christopher Nolan work on Blade 2 and Guillermo del Toro work on The Dark Knight. Both of these are non-original materials for them. They were hired to work on these characters that existed beforehand, and they brought their own styles to directing it. And I think it would be really interesting to see what they would do with it. And I think the challenge would be that neither director can make major changes to the script. The story is basically the same in both movies, but what the films look like, how they are filmed, the pacing of it, which things get focus and which don't, I think those are all things that you can find in the edit. And I think it'd be incredible to see what those two directors would do if they approached those stories. And now, again, I don't think that'll ever happen, but I do think it'd be really cool. And then I think the better way to do it is not just looking at adapted work, because even then, you're still bringing what you think the audience wants out of those characters on that front. It'd be more interesting to see what they would work on if they worked on each other's original scripts. So I think the closest parallel in terms of both their works lining up is probably Pan's Labyrinth and Inception. They are both movies about family and trauma and about how dreams affect our world. Now, you could argue that Pan's Labyrinth's magic was real. You could also argue that it was just kind of a coping mechanism and dream mechanics, similar to how Inception's dream mechanics may be real, maybe not be. We don't know. It's not necessarily clear at the end of both of those films. So I think it'd be really interesting to see Nolan work on Pan's Labyrinth and Del Toro work on Inception. And I think you'd get very different films, but I think you'd still get very great films out of it. And I think that'd be the best way to compare those two directors on that front. That being said, do I think this would ever happen in real life? No, both those directors have plenty of work that they want to work on before like doing any kind of challenge like this. But I think it'd be incredible if they saw this and they were like, you know what? Let's do an experiment like this and just choose like one little sequence so that way they can do this, and it would be really like a director on director material kind of thing, and we could have showcases of directors working on the same material in just like one scene from each movie, or maybe a small scene, maybe it's like half an hour or something like that, and they get to work on this and bring their vision to this work, so that way we can see how these different directors really approach the work and how different their styles really are.